X-Men 97 Season 2 Episode 7 is officially here, so let's just get right into it. Because today we're talking X-Men 97 Season 2 Episode 7 breakdown and review. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, so getting right into the episode, some of the things that I really liked. Starting out, getting to see a little bit more of Genosha, and seeing it from another point of view was really cool. We got it from Colossus and his sister's perspective, and unfortunately we had to witness another tragic death, and this actually set Colossus on the path that we saw him on in present day. So right off the bat, I thought we were in for an absolutely stellar episode. They kicked up the emotion in those very first scenes, and then picking up with Colossus joining this new group that was seeming to do justice for the mutants of Genosha and other mutants who have been oppressed. And they even go so far as to actually call out X-Factor in a way. I also really like that part of Colossus's new costume was a cape. If you add a cape onto a superhero most of the time, I think it makes it look better. And seeing Colossus all armored up, just so happened to also have a cape, was really cool. Now moving on to another thing that I really liked about this episode, this was a very big episode for Nightcrawler specifically. He had a tremendous amount of growth in this episode, and that's because the person that was kidnapped by Exodus, Colossus, and the other members of their acolytes was actually Nightcrawler's brother, the son of Sabretooth and Mystique, a son who hates mutants and pretty much dedicates his life to destroying all of mutant kind. He's actually running for presidency under the guise of hating mutants, and that's when he was kidnapped. He was actually at a rally, not only announcing his candidacy, but also proclaiming his hatred for mutants. So seeing Nightcrawler have to not only deal with the fact that his brother is literally a mutant hater, when Nightcrawler himself is not only a mutant, but he's also part of the X-Men, people who strive for a better mutant society and a better world for mutants as a whole, was just a really interesting situation to see Nightcrawler put in. And when they go to rescue Nightcrawler's brother, it does inevitably fail, mostly because their powers are being suppressed. The acolytes had utilized technology from Mr. Sinister to suppress mutant powers. So when they were there, they had no choice but to try to negotiate. And their way to try to negotiate was actually convincing Exodus and Colossus to have a trial for Nightcrawler's brother. And they actually agreed to it. And Nightcrawler's only condition was that Colossus was the one to oversee the trial. In my opinion, this is a really good choice because Colossus would probably be the only one who is unbiased in this moment, at least the most unbiased that is possible when you were dealing with a literal mutant hater. And at the beginning, you think this trial is going to be kind of a sham, and you think it is going to be very clear that Exodus is going to win very easily. However, once Nightcrawler starts to talk and starts to bring up all of the past that his brother had gone through at the hands of Mystique and Sabretooth, you can at least understand a little bit why he has such a tremendous hatred for mutants as a whole. But he also resents them for another reason. He was depending on his mutant X gene kicking in. He was counting on that power, not only to help him survive with the brutal life that he had been living thanks to his father Sabretooth, but he also wanted to make his father proud and make his father accept him. So he was counting on turning the age 13 so that his mutant X gene and latent abilities would kick in and allow him to truly become his father and mother's son. However, this never happened. So this definitely led to a lot more resentment and hatred for mutants as a whole. Yes, it was largely directed and caused by his parents, but mutants as a whole also garnered his resentment because they all got what he never could. They got their abilities, whereas he wanted those abilities to make his parents, or at least his father, accept him. But instead of that, he remained human, and thus that sent him on a path to hating all of mutant kind, to resenting his upbringing, and resenting the fact that he was born from two mutants, but yet was just ordinary. And we actually see that Colossus, through the course of this trial, is starting to get very emotional. So emotional, in fact, that Exodus actually believes that Colossus is going to find Nightcrawler's brother not guilty, so he calls Colossus a heretic and attacks him, ending the trial right then and there. However, it is then at this point that Polaris and Bishop arrive after destroying the tower that was suppressing all of their powers. So we then get a very brief fight between Exodus and the Acolytes going up against the X-Men, and this was a pretty cool fight scene, and it actually ends in a pretty insane way. Nightcrawler's brother decides to pick up a weapon and actually kills Exodus, proving in a way that Exodus was actually right, because although they were holding him captive, they at least weren't going to execute him or anything like that. They were just holding him prisoner. Whereas on the flip side, Nightcrawler's brother Creed literally decided to execute Exodus, which just shows how cruel he can truly be. And I think one of my favorite moments in this entire episode was actually Nightcrawler's realization of this. And this realization actually happens after Creed kills Exodus and then tries to take Nightcrawler hostage, and he points the weapon at Nightcrawler's head and says to get him out of there. So it's at this point we actually see Nightcrawler teleport them away. However, it isn't to anywhere safe. Instead, it is to a barren, cold wasteland, literally in the middle of nowhere. And it's at this point we get an exchange of dialogue between Nightcrawler and his brother. And Nightcrawler actually brings up a really great point. And he says something along the lines of, am I doing the right thing by protecting you? Or would it be more merciful to take you out, sparing hundreds, if not thousands of mutants, people like me, people who you would persecute and try to harm? And in this moment, we see a major shift in the character of Nightcrawler. One of the most compassionate people within the X-Men is actually starting to change. And this season specifically is showing us that in a lot of other characters. However, in Nightcrawler specifically, it is a really big shift to the character we know and love, but it's a shift that makes a lot of sense. He just saw his brother cold-heartedly execute someone, and then his brother decided to turn the weapon on him. After Nightcrawler was willing to risk everything just to protect and save his brother decided to betray him because his brother doesn't see him as anything other than a disgusting mutant. So in this moment, not only do we get to see Nightcrawler shift his character in that way, and we get all the justification for that in this specific episode, but we also see the X-Men as a whole becoming more cold-hearted. And this happens after Nightcrawler actually leaves his brother there. He decides not to save him. And although on one hand, he doesn't outright kill his brother, he also just leaves him there with the potential that he could freeze to death, that he could starve, that he could be left alone there to wander forever and die. And yes, it does stand to reason that Nightcrawler knew his brother would eventually be rescued. It is still a lot more cold-hearted a decision than we've ever seen from Nightcrawler in this series. And that's actually doubled down a little later on by Professor Xavier, when he is confronted and asked why the person the X-Men were supposed to save was left abandoned in the freezing cold. And Professor X just really coldly and sternly says, we went in there to save him and we did that. He was safe and we got him out of that situation. And he stands firmly behind what his X-Men decided to do. And in my opinion, I feel like this is just planting even more seeds for eventual conflict between the X-Men and the government. More specifically, between the X-Men and the Avengers. I feel like this is laying all of the groundwork for something that happened in the comics. And that something is the eventual Mutant Registration Act. And this is going to create a massive divide between heroes throughout the Marvel Universe. And we're going to see a lot of the heroes take the side of either the government and the Pro-Registration Act, or we're going to see people side with the X-Men and side with mutant society, saying they have a right to not want to register. And I feel like seeing a lot of those seeds being planted now just adds for a lot more hype for later seasons. We already know that season 4 has begun development, so this is going to be a show that is running for a long time. So it makes a lot of sense that they are planting a lot of those seeds for a lot of those big, massive storylines now in season 2. However, all that being said, those are all of my positives for this episode. Now I'm going to get into a lot of the negatives, and yes, I do have a lot more negatives than I usually do. This was probably my least favorite episode of not only this season, but possibly even this entire series as a whole, just because I feel like the momentum really started to pick up, specifically with the end of last episode, and going off of that, seeing Gambit being brought back to life and trying to find out what Apocalypse's true plan is, only to have this entire episode be essentially another side quest. It's like the Wolverine episode, except it contributed even less to the current story. So having yet another deviation episode from the main plot after last week's episode realistically only focused on Polaris, and the episode prior to that only focused on Wolverine, going on these little side quests, I feel like it is killing a lot of the hype for the Apocalypse storyline as a whole. And considering the fact that we only have 2 episodes left in this season, I feel like there's not going to be a tremendous amount of buildup, and everything's either going to be incredibly rushed, or it's going to just end on a massive cliffhanger, leaving most of this season being just setup. And that is going to be a huge shame, in my opinion. Now, considering that, the little bit of buildup that we do actually get at the very end of this episode, when Cable discovers the body of Apocalypse, was pretty cool, and all you see there is a playing card. So this makes you wonder, did Gambit actually kill Apocalypse somehow? And that would be absolutely insane, considering the fact that Apocalypse literally brought Gambit back to life, and Gambit was going to be one of his 4 horsemen. So did Gambit just turn on Apocalypse? Did Apocalypse somehow take over the body of Gambit? Or was this just a shell of Apocalypse and he molted or evolutionized himself in some way? These are all questions that we're going to have answered in these final 2 episodes. However, again, I feel like this is leaving a lot of chance that the story could feel tremendously rushed. And another thing we still haven't gotten is a proper crash out from Rogue. She was actually in a majority of this episode, and yet we still haven't seen her truly react to the loss of Magneto. And yes, I know she didn't truly love him like she loved Gambit, but still, considering the fact that she not only lost Gambit, but then lost Magneto in the way she did, in my opinion, would justify a valid crash out from her. And considering we still haven't gotten that, it is a huge shame. Now, are they saving that until she sees Gambit once again? Yes, probably. However, again, that just makes me wonder why they continue to have them go on these various side quest missions, essentially putting the Apocalypse storyline on the back burner for a majority of this season at this point. I just feel like considering they only have 9 episodes in this season, going on all these different side quests just really kills the momentum of the story as a whole. And that's why this episode in particular is probably the one I have rated the lowest throughout the entire series as a whole. But I'm interested to hear from all of you. What did you think of the episode overall? Are you worried about the end of the season being rushed? And what do you think happened to Apocalypse at the end of the episode? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.